I think you will all agree that this here is probably one of the best pieces of Warhammer 40,000 artwork ever created. This piece, which I bet you all know, is from the cover of the first edition of Space Hulk, one of the most famous Warhammer 40,000 related board games. It's looked upon fondly by many in the 40k community. Sadly, it's out of print at the moment, but the last edition was 4th, I think, a few years ago, which I also think was just a reprint of 3rd edition. Did they change anything between them? Now everybody knows that Space Hulk was an homage to Alien or Aliens, creeping around a sci-fi claustrophobic setting while being preyed upon by aliens, or in this case, gene stealers. The Terminators in this art are wearing Indomitus pattern Terminator armour, but look a little bit different to normal. These are even stubbier and a little egg-shaped. They also have the cool teardrop-shaped shoulder armour, which sadly gets dropped down the line. They're straighter these days. The Gene Stealers in this art are in their original pink and dark blue scheme. The best scheme for Gene Stealers. Nothing else ever seems right. There's been a few variations on it over the years, sometimes more purple and sometimes more fleshy, but always the same theme. Someone once told me this was Hive Fleet Hydra, but I don't know if that's legit or not. Do any of you guys know? Now, even though I must have seen this piece of art hundreds of times over the years, I had never noticed the walls were green until now. It looks a bit like a sewer, doesn't it? I would assume it's to contrast against the red Terminators. My name's Marcel, and this is SnakeWorks. Now, it is my goal one day to get a hold of the first edition of Space Hulk and paint it up for the channel, but it is rather expensive on eBay at the moment, especially for a complete set. So how does that old joke begin? A horse walks into a pub and the barman says, "Why the long face?" There might have been a little more to it than that. Now, I'm no equine expert or equine, so I can't really tell you exactly what species of horse this is, if it even is based on a real type. I'm aware of Shire horses and those weird white ones the royal family likes. Are they Lipizzanas? Now, I suppose it does look a bit like a Shire horse. It looks big, a little stocky, and has nice, hairy, fluffy feet. The reason I know about Shire horses is because my dear old grandfather used to breed them on his farm. Seeing that going on outside your bedroom window as a boy was eye-opening, to say the least. Now, we don't see a huge amount of horses in 40k. The ones we do see are usually used by the Imperial Guard, the Rough Riders, for example, or the Death Riders of Krieg. Although I think they might be a different type of horse, either genetically modified or alien or something. It's been a while since I read that lore. So I decided to go back to the books and find out what the deal with this horse is, expecting it to be some sort of weird alien horse or shapeshifter perhaps, but no, it's just a horse. What do you call horses that live in stables next door to each other? Neighbours. I'll get my coat. Oh, look out. It looks like someone's taken a candid photo of me down the gym. They certainly remind me of my muscles. I think what we're looking at here is someone undergoing some sort of surgery in Warhammer 40,000. There appears to be a sort of life support system of medical stuff attached to our subject, more victim here. Victim is probably more likely in the 41st millennium, eh? Now, pieces like this always remind me of the intro video to the old Syndicate video game. I think I had it on the Amiga. There was something called the Leonardo device that added bionic limbs, I think. Now, everybody raved about Syndicate, but I thought it was overrated. I was probably just bad at it. Our man in the picture has some interesting looking cables running into his elbow. What do you think these are for? Do they enhance his strength somehow? The guy also has what looks like a gigantic hypodermic needle poking out of his back. I would assume injecting some sort of drugs or something. On a side note, I have a massive needle phobia, so if I saw this in real life I would probably faint, fit, seizure and then wet myself. And I am not making that up. There's something odd going on with our man's face. I think he has a big bandage wrapped around it, mummy style. Maybe he's just had a face transplant, like in Face Off. I've never seen that movie. Is it any good? The lower half of the man's torso has some weird wiggly lines arranged sort of like a spring. I wonder what they're for. Maybe the wiggly lines are some sort of ESP test, studying the effects of negative reinforcement on ESP. I can sort of guess what the effect might actually be though, pissing him off. If you get that reference then please let us all know in the comments below. Now I know what you're all thinking and you would be wrong. This is in fact not Santa Claus or Father Christmas. It is in fact a squat, now known as the Leagues of Votann. But squats sounds 100 times better though, right? Now I loved the old style helmets the squats used to wear. They look like typical oversized Imperial Guard helmets mixed in with the Rebel pilot helmets from Star Wars. They have the big earmuff bits and sometimes even the big visors. I always wanted a replica X-Wing pilot helmet, but I never did get one. But I'm not sure what I would use it for though, to be fair. Now I might be mistaken here, but isn't that the Nurgle logo there on the squat's earmuff? 3 dots arranged together? Maybe it's just some ventilation holes. The squat has something just in front of his chin that reminds me of those harmonica harnesses you sometimes see. Could this be some sort of plasma harmonica weapon? Are there any mouth-activated weapons in Warhammer 40,000? On the squat's right shoulder, on our left, he has one of those weird little tilting shields. Well, that's what I think this is, but this one has what appears to be little eye sockets and a nose, reminiscent of those Easter Island heads. Mrs. SnakeWorks and I like to call them dum-dum heads, and 10 internet cookies if you get that reference. Now, although squats are now back, as it were, as the Leagues of Votann, I would still like to see the old style squats make a comeback. I much prefer the look and style of them, but that's just my opinion. Okay then everybody, I have to be honest here and say for once I don't really know what we're looking at. This one's a little confusing to me. At its most basic level, I'm pretty sure we're looking at a form of walker, but that's about as much as I can discern. It's a pretty strange looking walker indeed. It's certainly no Warhound Titan. Now this walker reminds me of something you might see on some old Roger Dean artwork. He did a few pieces with things like this for a lot of the old Psygnosis games, and I highly recommend checking them out. They're beautiful. My brain is struggling to work out which is forward for this walker. Is it walking to the left or right? The stance says left, but the toe says right. It's very confusing. Now, judging by the look of this thing, I'm going to say it was inspired by the AT-ST from Star Wars. As kids, we used to call them Scout Walkers, but I've no idea where we got that name from. Was it on the toy box? You know, after looking at this for a few minutes, I actually think it looks like a Sentinel, especially the newer ones. But who here remembers the first ones, the awesome eggs on legs? Now sadly, I feel the new Imperial Guard Sentinel is just too big for what it actually is. I much prefer the older, smaller variants. At the end of the day, it's just a man on a pair of stilts with a big gun. You don't need some massive contraption just for one gun, really. The original version sort of had this down to a T, the old egg on legs variant as they call it. And then after the egg there was what they call the sandwich version, which was like a square sandwich shape on a pair of legs again. You didn't see much of those two, did you? Probably go for a pretty penny on eBay again. Now we don't see this very often in our art videos, do we? It's a little slice of space. A spaceship. perhaps an early version of Battlefleet Gothic. I think it was called Space Fleet. Amusingly, in my notes I called it Space-O War, a terrible name indeed. I myself never managed to play Space Fleet or Battlefleet Gothic, or even Man-O-War for that matter. Were any of them any good, and did you guys play any of them? What were they like? Judging by the look, style and aesthetic of this ship, I would hazard a guess that it's an Eldar ship, or Eldari as they are known today. Why on earth did they change the name again? On the large dorsal fin sail thing, there appears to be a word of sorts. To me, it reads Imhotep. Are the Eldar fans of the Mummy movies? That recent one didn't do very well, did it? I didn't think it was as bad as people made out though. Now I myself do not recognise the ship, or have any idea what class it is or anything, but I am no 40k ship spotting expert. I can tell it's Eldar, but that's about it. If you know what ship class it is, then please let us all know, again in the comments below. The way the ship's sails are arranged like a big fish skeleton, and I think that's an interesting look. I don't think this carried forward into any later miniatures though. I think they had the sails, but not the bones. We return now to a little normality, a subject that's a lot more common in these art videos. Space Marines. You love to see it. Judging by that skull motif on the bare-headed Marine's shoulder pad, I would like to assume these are Silver Skull's Space Marines. But it's also possible it's just a Command Squad logo. The Silver Skulls were shown off in Rogue Trader, so I think that's a little more likely. The weapon the Marine is holding is quite interesting. Looks like a cut-down las cannon or a las gun, with a larger girth of the barrel. It might even be a las cutter. I think they looked a bit like this. On the right hand side of the picture, in the background, is what I like to think is meant to be another Marine, but the style makes him look like one of those weird little welded together sculptures made out of old tools, like spanners and wrenches. The battle taking place here appears to be on some sort of slope, a hill if you will. It's not as steep as the slope that Gandalf and the Rohirrim ride down in the Two Towers though, and that was a fantastic scene. Now when I read Two Towers as a kid, I always thought it was referring to Barad-dûr and Gondor's Tower of Ecthelion. Was it Ecthelion? Anyway, I've forgotten the name. The bad guys and the good guys going head to head. The Two Towers. But when I saw the extended version of Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson said the Two Towers referred to the unity of Orthanc and Barad-dûr. But I disagreed with that. I would love to hear what you guys think about this, because it's very important. I haven't seen my extended editions of Lord of the Rings for a while. I wonder where I put those. Probably in the garage somewhere. Did they ever release the extended editions on Blu-ray? Because that would be awesome. This here piece of artwork depicts the Orks at war. Amusingly, I was today's years old when I realised the Orks scream "war" was actually them screaming "war." Is that correct, or is my head just connecting these things together? Now this is a very chaotic piece. There's lots going on and there's a lot of detail dotted about all over, even if the piece itself isn't the biggest. Now sadly we can't make out or even see who the Orks are fighting, but knowing the era, it's probably Marines, or just more Orks. They do like to fight amongst themselves. On the right hand side of the picture is what I assume is an Ork wearing a weird looking suit of armour. It looks to be all enclosing like your typical knight suit of armour. This looks more like something from the Chaos armies as opposed to something the Orks might wear. It's strange. Now most weapons in 40k look like typical futuristic weapons, apart from the autogun I suppose. But the pistol the Ork is holding here looks to be Megatron from the G1 era of Transformers. Do they take place in the same universe? Would a 40k and Transformers crossover be an awesome event? What do you think? I do miss Megatron being a gun. Nowadays he's usually some sort of tank or random flying contraption. I think they had to change it because they didn't want kids running around with toy guns, but if that's the case, how come water pistols and cap guns still exist? Does anyone know the real reason? Now, not many people owned Megatron when I was a kid. Most people had Optimus Prime. I myself had Ultra Magnus. My cousin had Optimus Prime and I was very jealous. But I would like to get my hands on a G1 Megatron one day. Again, I suppose I could have a look on eBay and pay thousands. Here we have a group of people. There's an effect going on here with white streaks that look like they're either standing in the rain, which is most likely, or standing behind a transparent sheet. We have here some punks standing about outside some sort of fortress or city. Do you think it's theirs? Are they guarding it perhaps? Or are they just about to visit the local pub on their holidays? The punk standing in the centre of the picture has both fantastic hair and an awesome pair of wraparound shades. Mohawks sadly don't seem to be a thing anymore, and I haven't seen a pair of wraparound shades since my free pair of roll-up wraparound shades from McDonald's in the early 90s, and did anyone else ever have a pair of those? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think our man is a mutant based on his hands. Look at the size of those. They also look a bit like the Penguin's flipper hands from Batman Returns. It's possible it's just the art style though. The mutants are carrying interesting looking weapons, which sadly I cannot identify. They look a bit like auto guns or elongated 1980s heavy bolters to me. The mutants' base or fortress or whatever that structure is they're loitering around is built into the hillside. This reminds me of those posh looking houses from Lethal Weapon, the ones on stilts. They probably have a name, but I don't know it. Now I am a fan of the Lethal Weapon films, although the quality does taper off after the second one a bit. The first two are very good though. Now talking of quality, if you're enjoying this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Roger. If you are enjoying the content on the channel, then please consider joining us on Patreon, the link to which is in the description below or up here somewhere. Or you could even become a channel member, which is becoming all the rage these days. Again, to do that, there's a link in the description below. Anyway, that's enough e-begging. Let's carry on. Yep, Minox. Just what I thought. So here we have Han Solo, fresh off the set of The Empire Strikes Back from inside the Space Slug. It was no cave, you see. Although this might not actually be Han Solo, it does look an awful lot like him, even though it's just a man standing in some sort of fog or mist. Around Han Solo's body is a weird bubble effect. Is this some sort of force field, or is it just the artistic style? The way it's not evenly spaced makes me think it's some sort of physical cover he's wearing. Han is also wearing a face mask, but this one doesn't appear to be attached to anything. There's no pipe to draw oxygen from, and there's not even any straps holding it to his head. Maybe it's glued on, or he's holding it in his teeth. Most of the weapons in Rogue Trader art are hard to identify, and sometimes just made up for that one piece. I think this is the same. I don't recognise this weapon at all. It looks like a typical auto pistol with a weird cam looking device on the end of the barrel. What does that do? Rotate? Some awesome artwork there. If you want to see some more Oldhammer artwork themed videos, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. And as always, thank you very much for watching.